So we're talking about the drivers and disruptors in the Indian residential space today. And we have three very interesting panelists who provide very differing vantage points for us to look at the residential sector. So you have Kumpal, who's here on my right, firstly. So you have the crafted, calm sanctuaries that she creates in Mumbai and beyond in metro cities. Then you have Tejal on the far right, who creates very narrative-rich fantasy lands or dreamscapes, as you could call them, to escape into. And then you have Meena in the center, who does eco-sensitive urban developments, is what she calls them, where homes can plug into food, energy, and natural water systems. So from scale to materiality to aesthetics, we have three very differing, very interesting panelists. And I want to start with a very zoomed out lens, firstly, which is we've had a lot of disruptions in our world in the last 10 years. We've seen COVID, and how it impacted aspirations and how it impacted our lives. You had the work from home movement after that, and now you're witnessing the back to office movement. You're also seeing people moving away from cities into smaller towns because they understand the importance of health and wellness. We're also seeing a growing aspirational class of young Indians who have disposable incomes today. So what I want to put to you guys as the first question is, what is the one big aspirational change or behavioral change that you've seen coming from the client's end to you in the last 10 years? So I'll start with you, Kumpal.
First of all, thank you for having me, Design Democracy. I'm really happy to be here and amongst such a lovely set of people on the panel. Interestingly enough, Tejal and I were just having a conversation around something like this, that aspirationally, pre-COVID, or say 2000, up until 2016-17, the client would have to travel, read, research, or sort of, the aspiration came from what they saw, what they consumed when they made that effort. Today, the aspiration is set from a menu card, which is on social media, while you're scrolling through so much. So I just feel like there is no one aspiration that I can say that this is where the aspiration is. It's more like a menu card, and one wants to think, which is the client end or the user end wants to think that there is no wrong. But I feel like the aspiration could have stemmed from the context where you live, what's the environment like, would it work, would it not work, all of that, which kind of stayed relevant up until I think 2016, 2017, or even 2019. But then COVID brought about a huge change, and also the menu card just became too chaotic. So, yeah.
Okay, Tejal, you say you don't have a design style particularly, and you call yourself a lifestyle shrink.
I think I'm more schizophrenic now more than ever, yeah.
So you're always working with client aspirations, however fantastical they might be. What is the most fantastical aspiration that you've seen in the last 10 years?
So obviously I've had enough lifespan of working with clients and how it's generationally changed, right? And earlier, pre-COVID, like the age of the client and the requirement was very functional, and you had to get into like making sure that the wardrobes, blah blah blah, everything was great, and then you had to plug in the aesthetics. But I've noticed the shift in the age of the client, who's now that very successful between 30 and 40. Second generation, even if it's a multi-generation home, it's the guy who's, it's the son, the one in the middle who's taking, calling all the shots. And they are way more individualistic. They want a bespoke home. They want to talk about their latent desires, their fantasies, So it's very important to lean in and understand, take cues from, what they want their home to look like. We worked on spaces where we've had a couple tell us that we want such a layered home, we want it so over patterned, so dark, so crazy that we want to feel we are coming back to a love hotel. I mean, that was like, that set me, working in a whole different direction. And the other projects, I am thinking differently. I'm becoming a different creature each time. I'm shape shifting. Yeah.
Right. And Meena, with your projects, we see that there is a growing surge of people who are moving outside of cities, and it sort of accelerated with the COVID pandemic. It's also a more matured clientele. So while Tejal and Kumpal are working now with young Indians who have disposable incomes and who can actually see their dreams come to fruition, you're working with people who have kids who want to move outside the city because they want a better life. Cleaner air, cleaner water, cleaner food systems for the next generation. They want their kids to be able to cycle to school. You have also a very interesting business model, which is an architect-developer business model, which is not done very often because it is so hard to sort of get through. I want you to talk about the origins of your story, starting out as an architect, and how this transition happened as you saw this aspiration and this market developing in front of your eyes.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful question. And I think, your topic really got me thinking because it's drivers and disruptors. And when we're a collective of architects. We have a 30-year-old practice, fairly large practice. They're called FHT India. And we are advisors to developers and large-scale developments and townships and everything. And when we were doing that, one of the things that you have that architect's grain, right? You're like, oh, I'm giving this advice, I'm giving great advice, but somewhere on the other side of the table, that's not getting received. It's getting received in FSI, it's getting received in maybe some green spaces, but it's not getting received at a DNA level of a project. And it's not addressing, and there was a very strong voice internally within our firm that it was not addressing end users' needs. So when we said, there was an exercise about 13 years ago where we said, can we design our ideal client? And we said, oh, they would do this, they would do this, they would do all of these things. And then we couldn't find all of them on the market. So we said, if we have to drive change, we have to become drivers first. So we actually moved from being advisors and we said, let's start a development firm. Let's figure out, let's be our own client. Let's write our own brief. Let's design for a user group, right? And let's make the math work. And so when we started working from user group, understanding what they need, and those are the things that you mentioned, which is fresh air, great neighborhoods to raise children in, but also great neighborhoods to grow old in. Place where as a young mother, I wanted, to see myself age in a different kind of a community, not in a rat race, not in a dense neighborhood. So when we started looking at this and we started designing it, we did the prototype, became a hit. We realized that non-architects, regular end users who are looking for homes, were looking for these kind of homes. Low density, walkable communities, access to fresh air, access to safe food systems. So you're actually watching your food grow. We call our communities as prosumer communities. You produce and then you consume. So we produce energy. We're net zero communities. And then we consume that. We capture rainwater. We're water secure and water balanced communities. Produce food, consume, produce fresh air, afforestation at scale. So when we started designing for user groups, then we realized that we were actually talking to the right people, the right decision makers, which were the people who were going to buy those homes and live there, and they were going to settle. But of course, we also realized this density is not possible within a city. And we also believed internally that counter-urbanization is possible. With Netflix and internet, all rural areas are connected well. You have it there. So what is stopping us? COVID proved that we can learn remotely, we can live remotely, we can work remotely. So we said, okay, let's lean into that and let's take that forward. And now we are 10 projects in. Each village is about 200 homes on 60 acres. So we're talking about 1,500 to 1,600 families in the last 5 years who believe in this shift. So I think in terms of aspiration, we are seeing a lot of families wanting to move out of the city and, doing the reverse commute of an hour, on a highway rather than through a choked lane.
Right. I think it also brings up a very important aspect of values that you hold as a designer or as an architect or as a tastemaker who is nudging aspirations, who's nudging developments a certain way. I want to get to you, Kumpal. You say, and I mean, we can see it in your work, that you have a very specific design style. It is calm, it is organized, it is almost like a sanctuary from the noise and the chaos and the pollution of the city. So while Meena's driving people outside the city, you are finding ways that people can live a happy life within the city. I want you to talk about what your primary fundamental values are for design and how do you shape, what does home mean to you in that sense?
I think it's a brilliant question. I never thought about it that way. So first of all, where does this aesthetic really come from? We've also gone through, so this October we complete 14 years. That means that I've gone through my fair share of, how I arrived at it, a lot of wrongs, a few rights, and then eventually there is no perfect client and there is no perfect TG. I guess what I realized halfway through my journey at Purple Backyard was the one very important aspect of how do you design for someone is first take in all the data, which means that just lean in, listen very carefully and collect a lot of data as to what the client really wants. Why is he coming to you? What is the aspiration? How do they live their life? How do they go about their day? Is it a smaller unit family? Is it a multi-generational? What are they expecting out of the house? So we have an exhaustive questionnaire that I think instead of just emailing it to my client, now I take the time out to just sit with them. My team and I are just going to invite them to the studio or go over to their house. At the center, the client's comfort is paramount for us, and their feeling that they are heard first is also the key, because I might have arrived at my aesthetic, but at the same time I need to hear their voice to give them a rendition of what I want to create, but in their voice, because their house is their personality. It's an expression of them. Either they know it, either we help them arrive at it, or we give them a version of what we think through the data that they share with us, that this could be possibly what you're looking for. So there's a lot of listening and then collaborating and creating that together, and that's when one can really create something for somebody else to live in and then still feel that this is so them yet so the designer, and that's why I feel like we've arrived at an aesthetic, but every time we do a project it sort of has its own unique name, unique language, because no two clients are same and no two houses can be same. So there's a lot of this workshop, we call these meetings workshops, which it could take from an hour to half a day, where you're just like sort of making them comfortable to just express, and then take pieces from that. And this doesn't just happen once in the project. A lot of realignments keep happening over and over up until that last stage of staging and styling, where you're piecing together that art, that ways, that everything. Because our work at Purple Backyard starts from interior architecture and goes on to that styling, staging phase, which is also such a huge part of why the house or why the space is going to look like the person that is going to live in it. So there's this very iterative process and a journey. So it's not a simple answer, a one-day answer. It's literally that journey that you go on with the client and try to sort of make sense of sometimes chaotic, sometimes smooth, and sometimes a lot of learning, or sometimes a lot of educating the client that this could be, I would say it's almost like you're their partner in crime, to bring out like what they're looking to live in and thrive in and grow in as a family. So yeah.
That's beautifully put, and I think that's very in line with what Tejal also does. And I want to get to her design aesthetic, which a lot of us from the outside in can see. It is maximal, it is layered, it is driven by narrative and memory. But the counterpoint to maximalism is that it's often associated with a lot of excess or waste, or sometimes, how does the reality of maintenance sit with the fantasy of the creation that you've created? How do you deal with those challenges when you're working with clients?
So firstly, I mean, whatever looks, supposedly, the kind of DNA that I want to put in the place, the material palette, for me, the first question I would ask myself is, how beautifully would this age over time? I mean, it's not how great it looks for the first 5 years. It's like when it's aging, there's a patina, will that look beautiful? Then you don't want to touch it up. You don't want to do all that. I'm not very I don't crowd a place too much. I mean, I love color, layers, whatever. I've also done a lot of restaurants, so that has sort of made me kind of become more theatrical in my expression, because you are, creating a psychodrama of sorts. When it comes to, it's like this. If you are able to, people want to lift their alter egos in their home. It's not necessarily just a very calm and comfortable, very neutral space. They want to bring out their own, passions that they can't express outside it. And we are working for a couple that are music buffs. The entire home revolves around them, listening to music for about 4-5 hours a day. That's their thing. So we have color changing lights. We have mood changing things happening. But we have to plug in the right amount of tech to be able to do that. And the earlier home that I spoke, that they want a love hotel. So you can imagine the things that we have to put in to bring out that feeling. Also, people want to entertain more at home. That's a very big shift. So, yeah.
I think I'll put that question to Tejal actually. How do you create a house within 2,000 square feet where you're able to entertain 20 guests on a weekend, and you can create intimacy for a couple, over weekdays? How do you do that?
So I have this live example of a client who's given me a 23, and how aspirations and the client kind has changed, right? So it's a young couple in their late 30s. They've decided that, guys, late 30s is still young. So whoever's that. So they've decided that they are going to not have a kid, and they love entertaining, and they have this 2,300 square feet space, and they call it the lounge house. A name that I earlier did not understand, but they wanted to literally create a 1-bedroom, den, kitchen kind of a space, where the living is a huge space. So they got a 4 BHK basically, and now it's converted into a single suite with their walk-in closet, a large living room, and a small personal den to view movies, and a kitchen that they might not really enter ever in. So you see, as you enter the house, there's this passageway that leads into this large living room, which is pretty large given the Bombay general standard. But what I found interesting was, first of all, the brief was really different, right? 2,300, 1 bed. I mean, I was like, wow, can this really happen in Bombay? But it happened, and they wanted to make it inviting, warm, and cozy. And I was like, the living room is pretty large. I don't know how you do that. But then I guess how, with us at Purple Backyard, I think layering it with not just your soft furnishings, but also the art, and then using the right kind of lighting sets that stage. And also, we created these 2 key points in the living room, which is one is the entertaining console, which is just right behind the dining. It's a revealing bar, which is shut throughout the day, but when they actually have people over, it just opens up, and it has so much like color and personality happening, that it instantly sort of, with the dim lighting, gets in that intimacy and makes the larger, otherwise very tonal space amped up and yet very warmed up. So I also feel like that little drama of unveiling and the space changing through the day for different purposes is very key to designing something which is 2,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet, or a 4,000 square feet from a Bombay point of view, or from a metro city which is not going to provide you a very large scale every now and then, because it has to cater to so many multiple uses. In this case, I felt like I had the space, but there are cases where it's still 2,500 and you're making a 3 BHK. So I feel like that nuance of finding something new, something opening and leading you into something, the discovery element is what we create through our spaces in say metro cities or Bombay, and you feel like every time it's new and every time it's dynamic and every time it's cozy.
Right. I want to shift scales now, Meena, to you. So Kumpal spoke about how she's trying to create narratives within that space for different sorts of activities and programming to happen. How does that play out on a neighborhood scale? So you have a community that's, for all practical purposes, of the city grid, right? What are the amenities, what are the activities that you can zone and plan within that neighborhood that make it a lively community? I know, for instance, you've spoken about social spaces, healthcare, well-being. How do you plan that out, and what are the drivers in that direction for you?
I think when we started looking at homes and neighborhoods, the home was something that we knew, because we got it instinctively. Neighborhood references were a little difficult for two reasons. One is, in urban India, especially South India, I can speak for South India, urban India neighborhoods are changing. There are some that are organic old neighborhoods, then there were these new gated communities and new lifestyles that get adapted into that. Rural India has its flavor, and we were in the borders of both, right? And some of our references of neighborhoodliness is actually something that happened in our grandparents' house in my generation. I'm saying my grandmother's house. I remember things, climbing up on the mango tree, those kind of stories, right? But when we started as designers looking at, okay, here's a set of families that we are inviting them to come out of the city, we're creating that village, and how do we create serendipitous moments for them to meet each other so that they can move from being acquaintances to friends, to friendliness to friends, and then neighbors, and eventually a family, right? You are a connected family. So there are three things that we did at a structural level. First, in master plan, we said, what are the two things we will focus on? One is we will focus on physical fitness, and because we have farms, forests, and streams, so we said, okay, let's use all of those spaces for trails, cycling paths. So you had to use your all-terrain bikes, and you had to, and these are biodiverse environments, so you do see different things every season changes. You meet your non-human neighbors, like the neighborhood snake and the neighborhood bird. So we started looking at fitness, and then of course you do have your fitness clubs, we have a swimming pool, but the swimming pool is natural water, so it's like a temple pond, or the ponds of our village, but it looks like a pool. Then we have a badminton court, tennis court, gyms, all of that, which we are used to, so we brought those back. But the trails became something very important. One, the trail within the community, and the trail connecting all the village neighbors. So we have those kind of trails. The second thing we did was make sure passive healthcare was weaved in. So we have a health lounge, where we tie up with a healthcare provider, but we also have a therapeutic spa. But the spa is not your city spa. That's where you get your Saturday malish done, right? You come there, you do all the bath rituals we used to do. It looks like a spa, but what the service is that, right? So we started looking at how we were socializing, how we were doing fitness, how the malish used to be like a family thing. Your entire like they sat under the sun. So every house has an outdoor shower area, and there are collective spaces where you can have, collective activities. In Telangana, for instance, the pickle season is big. Now all of us are making pickles at home earlier, but or most of us are buying. But I think now, because we created places for families to make pickles, so pickling is together every summer. So you start looking at our real culture and, just go back to roots, but bring it to this century, that you don't sit there. No, none of us want to go back, right? Especially urban India, it takes a while to go back. But what we can bring forward, we brought that through space design, through placemaking. Placemaking is very big. As developers, we don't just create these spaces and say, "Bas mera kaam ho gaya." We are actually there. We have a facilities management team, and one key component of their service is culture building, urban culture building. Come together, celebrate together. How do you do green Golu? How do you do plastic-free Ganesh Chaturthi? How is Christmas celebrated? How is Independence Day? Like, we actually have community teams that focus on that, and of course food brings everybody together. So our restaurants, and every community has a community kitchen that brings everybody together. So festive is not just special occasion. Festive is just neighbors coming together and deciding, okay, let's have a meal, and then let's play some cards, let's listen to music, let's watch IPL. So we started designing from the user's behavior, user's needs, from a lot of user research. And what she was saying is so critical. 13 years ago, we did a user research that spanned Bangalore, Hyderabad and Chennai, because we had offices there. And we started really getting deep into the inside. And I think that informed a lot of our design for neighborhood spaces.
So I think it's a beautiful thing that you said, which is we're going back to our culture and our roots of how we used to live, how we used to entertain, how we used to socialize. And we've obviously seen that change over the past 20 years, where we've taken Western models, Eurocentric models, and copy-pasted them into our residential developments, and they've sold. And it was beginning to change our culture. And we are now beginning to see that resurgence right now, where people are going back to understanding how they would like to behave in a social setting, and try to craft an environment around them that actually responds to how they would like to sort of live their lives. And I think, Tejal, I would like to come to you for that.
So, before that, I'd like to expand on another question that you put forth, that how have you seen the client, how have you seen the client evolve, right, along, the generation that changed. About probably up to 10 to 15 years ago, clients were the kind that they wanted their home to look like, they wanted the home to be like that sort of show-off home. Like, it's designed. I had to hire a designer. I paid fees for it. Oh, I bought this brand. Oh, this material costs this much, But now, the shift I've seen, clients want, they're not dying to have their home. They want the home to completely reflect who they are. So it's very important for me to understand their seminal, that seminal part of them. And they're not very brand conscious. They're happy to go back to natural stone and plastered walls, and these are people whose fathers and they actually say, my father did his home with so and so. It's got all this Italian marble and this. I don't want any of that. So that's another change. It's an inverse snobbery that's playing out.
Right, and I think I was going to come to that question, which is sort of material literacy and how architecture and design cannot exist in isolation, but you have to work with the vendor and brands ecologies at play here. And we're still seeing, you can walk around this show and you'll see a lot of Italian marble, for instance, right? In your experience, what is a material or a specification that you've discovered is not working anymore, or is not functional anymore, it cannot last anymore, and you've stopped using it, and you can speak from your learnings also, like if you made a mistake and you've learned through that mistake?
Like for me, to go overboard with the PU finishes on lateral surfaces, like hell, after a month it's like I can see that little scratch and you can't touch it up. Look, the thing is, when you apply material, I've made many mistakes, but when you apply material, you got to be able to use it in such a way that if it has to be touched up, it's just getting touched up. Not like you have to go back to ground zero and rework the whole thing again. The other thing that I feel yet doesn't work in our homes are these very over automated kitchens. Like my clients do show me stuff that, the shutters open like this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, who's using the kitchen? Are you doing it yourself? Do you just make like a salad every day? Like how? So we don't. I honestly brainwash them. I know I can make them spend a lot and I can make a lot of that too. But no. I don't want to go that route. It's not practical here.
Right. Kumpal, what is your take on this in terms of materiality and
glass fronted shutters where you have to touch with your fingers? No help.
Your question is which material I would stay away from or
Yes.
what doesn't work anymore.
It's something that looks great, sounds great, but in reality just isn't functional or won't last.
All the materials that are trying to be, if you want to use leather, just use leather. If you want to use a certain material, just use that. Don't use a version of it. Because, that whole element of... So for me, I'll just go back to something else first, that I think my spaces are also a lot about revival and nostalgia. I think that's something that I get inspired by, and I want to bring that into the today and make the spaces look global. So if I actually start from that route, I want to stay true to the materiality first. So if to a designer like me, you're going to bring out these 4 materials, it's not going to work first. So anything that's not serving a right purpose. Having said that, I am guilty of using these UPVC panel in bathrooms because I want to make like 0 paint bathrooms, because I feel like, in apartment living, there are just so many variables today. Your neighbor's bathroom could leak and that could be a problem for you. So might as well just use a UPVC panel. But now some brand has made a beautiful UPVC panel that looks like wood. Hell yes, I'm going to use it. I'm guilty of that. But I do not want to bring that UPVC panel into my bedroom or into my wardrobe or into a dining space and say that, let's just change wood with UPVC wood-like material. So that's where I kind of draw the line, that if it's serving a real purpose, if it's solving something, then let's sort of look at the merit of it. Otherwise, let's stick to the natural, the original, and celebrate that for a reason.
Meena, I'll come to you next. I think with materiality and craft, when you're working at the scale that Tejal and Kumpal are, right, you can choose to make some of these choices because the supply chain supports it. On the other hand, when you're working with 200 homes, how do you scale materiality up? What are the challenges that you're seeing already in the industry, and what would your 1 or 2 suggestions be if we are to be able to create ecologically sensitive, healthy material streams and scale that up and not let it be just a bespoke, custom crafted thing for a home or 2?
As an aspiration, as a company, we want to bring bespoke, crafted homes. That is because your home is like your outfit, no? It has to. So while we do homes architecturally, they are identical in our communities. There is variations and differences, but fairly, we have modularized the architecture. But internally, the home is personalized for each family. So we have a design build company that focuses specifically on this one, and they explore alternate materials like this. But at architecture level, because what the homeowner gets from us as a builder is we give a fully fitted home. Beyond that, they want additional stuff, they can go to the design build company for it. In terms of materiality, it's not stuff that doesn't work for us. We've tried such lovely materials. I wish they worked better for us. For instance, we use Vedic plaster for inside our, these are high-end homes, like a Vedic plaster in a home that we're selling at, 10 plus crores. We loved it. It works. It looks great. We don't have to paint it. Maybe you just need to stain it. and 41 homes in out of 105 homes, 41 homes in, and the supplier is not able to supply at the demand that we have at the speed at which we are building, right? He's got good intent. He's a business guy. We've got good intent. We are great with it. Our customers have no problem. So sometimes scaling your new materials is something that's becoming a problem. So, we are talking and seeing how to, there should be an investor pool that should go and look at alternate building materials and say, hey, what do you need? How do you need to set up? If, we are now trying to mainstream sustainable eco communities. So they're like, if they are there, there's a market space, and to push that. The second thing in terms of materiality is your actual walls and windows, right? Where do we go there? Like, we cannot do wooden windows at scale, right? Especially virgin wood. We don't want to. So we're looking at fallen wood. We're looking at reclaimed. We're looking at industrial byproducts as alternate materials. But at the same time bring that element of design. You don't want to do the tire with rope and say this is upcycled, right? You still want to bring high design into the home, into the interiors, into fabrics. So we have figured a few things out in terms of skin envelope. We have to go a lot more in terms of interiors. And I think a lot of that is education and partnership with vendors and suppliers, and to see what roadblocks they have, and to actually help weed out some of those roadblocks to scaling. I mean, it's business scaling, right? At that point, what you're doing is, okay, where's your product coming from? Our biggest aspiration in life at some point is to do a eco community where the home can be sold at 60 lakhs and every product is sourced within a 100-kilometer radius of that place, right? And yet we don't compromise on design wow. We don't compromise on user experience, and we don't compromise on climate impact. I mean,
so what's important here is that you obviously need to create collaborative channels between the different industries, and like you said, there has to be a business case to it. If you don't have a business case on both ends, it doesn't work.
Correct.
And that is where somebody like you can come in, who can wear both those hats simultaneously and inform some of those decisions and nudge them in the right direction. Tejal, I want to come to you next. So while somebody like Meena struggles with material sourcing and scaling that up, when you're working in Mumbai or in metro cities, you're largely working in buildings that have been there for 20 years or more, right? You're working within an architecture of not your own making, and you can't necessarily control it. So if you were to suggest to developers and builders, what are the challenges you are facing within the architectural sort of makeup of the same old living, dining, bathroom concept that's lasted for so many years, and with changing aspirations, with changing sort of evolving needs, what is it that you would recommend a forward-looking developer to do today?
I mean, are you referring to like their future concepts in design?
Yes.
Well, if it has to be a show flat, then they do what they do, right? Depending on who's coming to look at it. But I think showcasing more than just beautiful furniture. Like now I've seen that people want a poker room in the house. People want home theater. People actually want very specific designated spaces. So how do you bring that as a variety, even as a developer and get those kind of variations to offer? So with the clubhouses or whatever, because now the pool and the gym and all is a given. But I think there are more and more, elements of lifestyle that could be, plugged in. Now, one of the most disruptive things that we've also seen in the past, right? Homes were status symbols. You did that as a sign of prosperity, the symbol of your, where you arrived. But now, while people don't want brands, everybody wants to buy design. Even if it's a 2 BHK apartment, the person's like kind of happy to access somebody who's willing to, do it for a certain fee. So I think like it's not really the privy of the elite anymore. It's more democratic. So that's a very big game changer, that when your client becomes younger, the lifestyle requirements are more, they have more variations within them, whether it's separate bathrooms for the couple, things like that.
Kumpal, I want to end with you on a much broader sort of topic, which is, we were joking right before the panel that you're one of those sort of foreign returned design school grads, right? So your design language, is very global in that sense. What do you think about where we are as a nation today, and where our people, and their sense of identity and culture is today? And how do you see that changing residential design over the next 10 years?
So I feel like back in the day, people would, like if I talk about my projects from 2011 to 2017, the conversation around design was more from a materiality perspective. Which material do we use so the product or the project looks expensive? Today it is become about who am I, what do I want to sort of project through my house, and that has brought in this element of storytelling. Now the storytelling, we help our clients decode through that workshop, wherein we also not just talk about the new, but how is it that we're going to create this, I call it the cultural memory, which is bringing something from your past. And if you just, sort of think about it, I feel like these days we are all wanting to sort of seek that comfort from the old era, from the old times, what our grannies did, or what our mummies did, or what our dads did. And how rightly she said that we're trying to, that pickle making activity, how do we sort of revive those, I call it again the nostalgia based activities into the today, where the movement or the flow of the day is so fast, but yet you want to come back home and seek some rest into these sort of activities. And I feel like in this overstimulated world, it's not going to really not be overstimulated, right? So this little piece of heaven, this want to create this my personal space, my piece of heaven, outside the city, inside the city, wherever, I think we're all craving it. So I feel like there's going to be a shift, or there is already a shift, wherein this, I wouldn't call it slow living, but building this house or this space around a cultural memory, which is a little bit old, a little bit new, and so much of that person or the family living in it. So I would actually put it like that.
I think that's the perfect way to actually end this panel. I couldn't have concluded the panel better. I mean, there are individual interests, but we are sort of within that continuum of, there's global and local, and there's culture and memory and expression, and there's identity and pride in who we were, and sort of trying to bring it back. Tejal, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, because I mean, as a designer now, earlier I would describe my work through a narrative of material and, table, dining table, walls, etc. I think now when I approach design and material, I'm writing the future biography of an individual who's going to inhabit it. So I've seen even my approach has altered. It's no longer about the material, it's more about the person. And that person definitely wants to feel that, yes, this is my home. It's got to be that way, of course, all the way. But I think because people are the generation now that is calling the shots is way more in touch with what they want, and they're very, very clear about what they don't want. So I think that's how we've become like storytellers. It's not like my own personal vanity or ego. I am doing something bespoke for them.
Okay, thank you. We will wrap it up here. Do we have time for a question or two? No? Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Suneet,
so
and
much.
Thank you to all of our panelists.